The following transmission is a work of fiction. This is now tuned the dead broadcast.
My phone went off at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I want you to understand that this is the only reason I'm still here to tell you any of this. If I'd been in the shower, if I'd been asleep, if I'd left the phone on the counter and gone to take the trash out like I almost did, I don't know. I don't know what I would be right now. The alert was not a weather alert. It was not an Amber Alert. It was something I had never seen before. And I have lived in this city for 11 years. The header just said, Civil Advisory Immediate. No agency name, no county, no region code. Just those 3 words, and underneath them, a single instruction in a font that looked like it had been typed by somebody who did not have time to format anything properly. It said, do not respond to any voice that calls your name from outside your residence. Do not open doors or windows. Do not approach exterior walls. Updates to follow. I read it twice. I read it 3 times. I walked into the living room where my roommate Devin was watching a basketball game with his feet up on the coffee table. And I held the phone out to him without saying anything, because I wanted to see his face before I said a word, because I wanted to know if I was the only one who got it. He saw it. He sat up. He pulled his own phone out of his pocket and turned the screen toward me, and the same message was on his screen, the same 3 words, the same instruction, the same lack of any signature or source. And then, from the street outside our 2nd-floor apartment, somebody called my name. Not loud, not urgent, just a calm, almost friendly voice, the way a neighbor calls you when they've found your mail in their box. It said, "Hey Marcus, you up?" I did not answer. That is the only reason I am still here. Devin muted the TV. He did it slowly, like sudden movements might be heard through the walls, which is stupid, but I understood it, because I was already breathing differently, already standing very still in the middle of my own living room, like the floor was made of something thin. The voice outside called again. "Marcus, you forget I was coming by? It's me, man. It's Trevor." I do not have a friend named Trevor. I have never had a friend named Trevor. I worked with a Trevor at the warehouse in 2019, but he moved to Phoenix, and we have not spoken since. And the voice did not sound like that Trevor. It sounded like nobody I knew. It sounded like a stranger who had decided, very recently, that he was somebody I knew. Devin whispered, "Don't go to the window." I wasn't going to. The alert said not to. But I wanted to. That is the thing I need you to understand right now. The thing that is going to come up again and again as I tell you this. The voices are good. The voices are very, very good. From the very first one, from the very first night, they were already good enough to make you want to look, to make you want to check, to make you want to be sure. The voice said, "Marcus, I've been out here 10 minutes, brother. Come on." It used the inflection my actual friends use. It used the word brother the way Andre uses it, with a soft drop on the 2nd syllable. It paused in the middle of the sentence the way a real person pauses when they're getting frustrated but trying not to show it. I want to be clear. This was not a robotic imitation. This was not somebody reading off a script. This was a voice that sounded like it had been studying me. My phone buzzed again. 2nd alert, same header. Civil Advisory Immediate. New text underneath. It It said, "The voices may use names, personal information, or familiar speech patterns. They are not the people they claim to be. Do not engage. Do not confirm your presence. Do not speak." Devin and I looked at each other. Neither of us made a sound. Down on the street, the voice called my name one more time, softer now, almost disappointed. Then it went quiet. And then we heard it call somebody else's name, 3 doors down. The walls in this building are thin. I have complained about this for years. I have heard arguments. I have heard music. I have heard a woman crying through 2 layers of drywall at 3 in the morning. And I have always hated it. Tonight I was grateful for it. Tonight, every thin wall in this building became a way of knowing I was not alone. Through the wall to our left, I heard Mrs. Atchison's TV cut off. She always watches the news at this hour. The silence on her side meant she had gotten the alert too. Through the floor, I heard the upstairs couple, the ones with the baby, moving very quickly across their living room and into the bedroom. And then I heard the bedroom door close. And then I heard nothing. Down on the street, the voice was calling somebody named Janelle. It was using a different tone now, younger, a little higher. It sounded like a teenage boy who had been waiting on the sidewalk for his girlfriend to come down. It said, "Janelle, my mom's gonna kill me if I'm not back by 10. Janelle, please." I do not know a Janelle in this building. But somebody must, because I heard a window open on the 3rd floor. Not all the way, just a crack, just enough. Devin grabbed my arm. He didn't say anything. He just grabbed my arm, hard, and we both stood there listening. And the voice on the street said, "There you are. Hey, come down, okay? Just come down." And I heard the window slide further open. I am telling you what I heard. I am telling you exactly what I heard. The window slid further open, and the voice on the street got softer and warmer, and somewhere on the 3rd floor, a girl said something I couldn't make out. And the voice answered her, and she answered back. And I could hear her starting to laugh, the kind of laugh you do when somebody has been ridiculous and you can't help it. Then the laughing stopped. It stopped in the middle of a breath. And the window upstairs did not close. Devin's phone rang. We both jumped. He looked at the screen, and it was his sister calling from Cleveland. And he answered it on speaker because at that point, neither of us wanted to be the only one hearing anything. His sister was crying, not hysterical, just that low, steady, controlled crying you do when you are still trying to function. She said, Devin, are you inside? Are you inside right now?" He said, Yeah, we're inside. What's happening over there?" She said the alert had gone out in Cleveland too. She said the alert had gone out in Columbus, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit. She said her husband had checked Twitter before the cell network started slowing down. And the alert was going out everywhere. Every city, every small town, every zip code anybody had thought to check. She said, "Devin, the voices are outside our house. There are 3 of them. One of them sounds like Mom." Mom has been dead for 6 years. Devin sat down on the couch very slowly, like his knees had decided for him. He said, "Don't open the door, Sarah. Don't open the door. Do you hear me? Don't open it." She said, I'm not, I promise." But she keeps asking why I won't let her in. She keeps asking what she did wrong. The call cut out. He tried to call back. It went straight to a recorded message saying the network was experiencing high traffic. He tried again. Same message. He tried a third time, and the phone just sat there with the call symbol spinning and spinning and not connecting to anything. Outside, on our street, a new voice had started up. This one was calling for somebody named Patricia. It sounded like an elderly man. It sounded tired. It sounded like he had been walking for a long time. He said, "Patricia, Patty, it's cold out here, baby. Patty, please." I want to tell you that nobody answered him. I want to tell you that, but 2 buildings down, I heard a front door open. I heard it open all the way. I heard a woman's voice say, "Daddy?" In the high, broken way you say it, when you have not seen somebody in a long time and you cannot believe they're there. And then I heard the door close. And I have not heard anything from that house since. We turned off every light in the apartment. We didn't talk about it. We just did it. Room by room, the bathroom, the kitchen, the bedroom, the hallway, until the only light left was the soft blue from the TV, which we had left on with the sound muted because the absence of any glow at all felt worse than a small one. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch. Devin sat on the floor with his back against the wall by the front door. Like he wanted to be able to hear anybody who came up the stairs. We left our phones face down because the alerts kept coming. And every new buzz was making my hands shake worse than the last one. The voices outside did not stop. They got quieter, but they did not stop. All night long, every few minutes, somewhere down the street, somebody would call somebody's name. Sometimes I recognized the name. Sometimes I didn't. The Henderson's son. The woman who runs the laundromat. A kid I used to play basketball with in high school, whose name I had not heard out loud in 15 years. That last one made me cry. I am not proud of it. I did not make a sound. I just sat there on the floor with my back against the couch, and I cried very quietly while a voice that sounded almost exactly like my friend Eric, who died of an overdose in 2018, stood on the sidewalk under my window and asked me if I was going to leave him out there all night. I did not answer. At some point, I fell asleep sitting up. When I woke up, it was light outside, and the voices had stopped, and the city was so quiet you could hear birds. I had never realized how loud the birds were. The first thing I did was check my phone. The alerts had stopped at 4:13 a.m. The last one said, "Exterior activity has decreased. Do not exit your residence until further notice. Daylight does not guarantee safety. More guidance to follow." There was no more guidance. There was nothing else. The phone had service again. 2 bars, weak but real. And I scrolled through my notifications and found 170 text messages from people I knew. Most of them said the same thing in different words. "Are you okay? Are you inside? Did you hear it too?" Some of them did not say that. Some of them said, in voices I recognized as the voices of people I love, things like, "Marcus, please come downstairs," or "Marcus, I'm outside your building," or "Marcus, open the door. I have been knocking for an hour." Those messages had come in at 2 a.m., at 2:30 a.m., at 3:15 a.m. They had come in from real numbers belonging to real people. my mother's number, my ex's number, my boss's number, my cousin's number. I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring. She had not sent the messages. She had been inside her house in Georgia with the doors locked and the curtains drawn. And she had heard her own dead brother calling her from the porch for 3 hours. And she did not know I had received anything from her number at all. She said, "Baby, are you safe?" I said, "I think so, for now." She said, "Don't trust your phone either. I don't know how, but don't trust your phone either." I told her I loved her. I told her I would call again at noon. We hung up. Devin was at the window, not standing in front of it, standing to the side of it, the way cops do in movies, with his back flat against the wall and just one eye looking through the gap in the curtain. He said, "Marcus, come here, slowly." I went over. I stood on the opposite side of the window and looked through the other side of the curtain. The street looked normal, except for the shoes. There were shoes on the sidewalk, not piles of them, not heaps, just shoes, in pairs, neatly placed, scattered up and down the block in the spots where the voices had been standing the night before. Some of them were nice shoes. A pair of brown leather loafers in front of the building across the street. A pair of pink sneakers on the corner. Work boots, sandals, slippers. One pair of barefoot impressions in the dust that did not have shoes at all, but had the same neat paired placement. As if whoever or whatever had been standing there had stood very still for a very long time, and then when they left, had left only the suggestion of feet. There were no people, no bodies, nothing that suggested violence, just the shoes, and a kind of stillness in the air that I had never seen on this street, not even during the early days of the pandemic when nobody was leaving their houses. The shoes in front of the building 2 doors down, the one where I had heard the door open and close, were a pair of old white nursing shoes, the kind a woman in her 60s might wear if she was on her feet all day. They were placed neatly on the welcome mat. The door behind them was closed. The blinds were drawn. I do not know who lived in that house. I never met them. I do not know if anybody is still inside. Devin said, "I'm going to try the news." He turned the TV on. The local news was running. The anchor was a woman I'd seen 1,000 times, but her face had something wrong with it that I could not name at first. And then I realized it was that she was not wearing makeup. She had clearly come in fast. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were red. She was saying, "Repeat, do not exit your homes. We are receiving reports from across the metropolitan area and from cities across the country. The Department of Homeland Security has issued a joint statement with FEMA confirming that last night's events were real, were widespread, and are ongoing. We have very little verified information at this time. What we can tell you is this: do not respond to voices outside your home. Do not open your doors. Do not approach your windows. If you have already lost a family member overnight, we are advising you not to search for them. Repeat, do not search for them." She paused. She looked off camera at somebody. She looked back. She said, "We are now being told that there are an estimated 300,000 people missing in the United States as of 6 a.m. this morning." 300,000. I want you to sit with that number for a second, the way I had to sit with it. Because the anchor said it, the way you say a number, you have not had time to actually feel yet. She just said it. 300,000. And then she went on to the next sentence, as if it were just another statistic on a teleprompter. But you could see her hands shaking when the camera cut wide. By 8 a.m., the number was 400,000. By 10 a.m., the number was estimated at 650,000 domestically, with the federal government no longer providing international estimates because the data was, in their words, actively unstable. I want to be clear about what that meant. It did not mean they didn't know. It meant the number kept moving while they were trying to count it. People were still going missing. In broad daylight, from inside locked houses, with no voices outside, with nothing visible on any street camera, any doorbell camera, any baby monitor. The footage from inside the homes just showed people sitting on their couches, and then a brief gap of static, and then an empty couch, no motion, no transition, just a person, and then a place where a person used to be. The news showed one of these clips. They blurred the faces, but you could still see what was happening. A man eating cereal, a 2-second flicker, an empty kitchen with a spoon still in the bowl. Devin turned the TV off after the third one. He said, "We need to talk about food." I had not thought about food. I had not thought about anything practical. My brain had been running in circles for 6 hours, and none of those circles had touched the question of what we were going to eat or drink or do with our trash, or how long we could stay in this apartment, if going outside was a thing that no longer existed as an option. We did inventory. We had 3 boxes of pasta, a half-empty jar of sauce, 6 cans of beans, a bag of rice, 2 onions, half a head of garlic, a carton of eggs, almost a full gallon of milk, peanut butter, bread, some old frozen chicken, and enough coffee for maybe 10 days if we stretched it. Water was the bigger problem. The tap was still running. We didn't know how long that would last. We filled the bathtub. We filled every pot. We filled every empty bottle. By the time we finished, my back hurt and my hands were shaking from caffeine and adrenaline and the slow understanding that we were now inside something we were not going to walk out of the same. The phones buzzed again. Civil advisory immediate. Same header, same format. New text. It said, "Do not respond to voices, including familiar voices, transmitted through any device. This includes phones, televisions, smart speakers, baby monitors, and intercoms. If a familiar voice contacts you and requests entry, location, or confirmation of identity, do not respond. Disconnect the device if possible." Devin and I looked at our phones. Then we looked at each other. Then we both, very slowly, unplugged the TV. I want you to understand how strange this felt. Not the unplugging, the reason for it. The voices had moved. They had moved from the street into the wires. They were no longer outside in a physical sense. They were inside the building's plumbing, the building's electrical, the building's signal. They were inside the things we used to talk to the people we loved. Devin's phone rang. It was his sister's number again. Cleveland. He did not answer. It rang for 40 seconds. It went to voicemail. The voicemail notification popped up almost immediately. He looked at me. I shook my head. He did not play it. He pressed delete. The little trash can icon ate the file and the screen went dark. He said, "I'm going to assume she's fine until I have a reason to believe otherwise." I said, "Okay." I said okay, but what I meant was, You and I both know she might not be fine, and we are going to live in the part of the day where we don't know yet, because the part of the day where we do know is going to be unbearable, and we are not ready for it. My phone rang. It was my mother's number. I did not answer. It rang for 40 seconds. It went to voicemail. I did not play it. I deleted it. I felt something inside my chest tear in a whole, quiet, permanent way. The kind of tear you cannot stitch back later. And I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets, and I held my phone in both hands, and I did not cry, because there was no time for crying yet. There was only the next decision, and then the next one. The phone rang again, my mother's number again. I let it ring. It started in the afternoon, around 3. A soft, polite knock on our front door. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more knocks. The rhythm of somebody who was not in a hurry, who had all day, who knew we were home. We did not move. We did not breathe loudly. We sat in the kitchen with our backs against the cabinets, and we listened. A voice on the other side of the door said, "Marcus, Devin, it's Mr. Atchison from next door. My wife isn't doing well. I just need to use your phone." Mr. Atchison is a real person. Mr. Atchison is the husband of the woman whose TV had cut off the night before. Mr. Atchison has lived next to us for 4 years and has borrowed our phone exactly 0 times, because Mr. Atchison has his own phone and is not the kind of man who knocks on neighbors' doors. The voice sounded exactly like him. It said, "Marcus, I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing." I stopped breathing. I just stopped. Devin stopped too. We sat there in the kitchen with the cabinets pressed into our spines, and we did not breathe. And the voice on the other side of the door waited and waited. And then, after a long time, it said in a slightly different tone, slightly less polite, slightly less like Mr. Atchison, "You can't hold your breath forever." Then the knocking stopped. I did not hear footsteps going away. That is the part I want you to remember. There were no footsteps. The knocking just stopped. And whatever had been on the other side of that door either left without making a sound or did not leave at all. We sat in the kitchen until the light through the kitchen window started to go orange. Then we got up, very slowly, and we moved the bookshelf in front of the door. It took both of us. It was heavy. We did not speak the entire time. When we were done, we sat back down on the kitchen floor. And we waited for the second night. Sunset was at 7:42 p.m. I know this because I checked. I checked because I needed to know exactly how much daylight I had left, the way a diver checks his oxygen. And at 7:30 p.m., I sat by the kitchen window with my back to the wall, and I watched the light go through the colors it goes through. And I tried not to think about what was going to start when it was gone. At 7:43 p.m., 1 minute after sunset, the first voice started. It was down the block, far away. A man calling somebody named Eduardo. The same patient, slightly tired tone we had heard the night before. The same friendly inflection. The same way of pausing in the middle of a sentence, the way a real person pauses. By 7:50 p.m., there were at least 6 voices on our block. By 8 p.m., there were too many to count. They were not shouting. They were not competing. They were spaced out evenly, one every few houses, the way carolers space themselves out, the way professionals space themselves out when they have done a thing many times before. The civil advisories had stopped coming. The last one had arrived at 5:14 p.m. It had said, "Federal response capacity is severely reduced. Local authorities are no longer able to verify or respond to incidents. You are advised to remain inside, remain silent, and do not respond to any communication from this point forward." That was the last alert. There were no more. I want to tell you about the silence between the voices, because the silence was almost worse than the voices themselves. In between each name, in between each soft, friendly call from the street, there was a stretch of nothing. No traffic, no sirens, no dogs barking, no planes overhead. The whole city had gone so quiet that the voices outside sounded like the only sound in the world, and you could hear them from a long way off. You could hear them 3 blocks away, calling somebody's brother, somebody's daughter, somebody's high school best friend. Devin and I sat on the bedroom floor with the door closed. We had moved in there because the bedroom had only one small window, and it faced the alley, not the street. We had put towels along the bottom of the door. We had turned every device off. We had even removed the batteries from the smoke detectors because we did not trust anything that could make a noise. We sat in the dark. We waited. At 9:14 p.m., a voice in the alley called my name. I knew it would happen. I had been waiting for it. But the part I was not ready for was that this voice did not sound like a friend. And it did not sound like a stranger pretending to be a friend. It sounded like me. It sounded exactly like me. My voice, my pitch, my inflection, the way I drop the R in my own name when I say it casually, the way I say, "hey," with the little upward lilt at the end. It was me. It was me standing in the alley outside my own bedroom window, calling up to my own apartment. It said, "Hey, it's Marcus. Let me in. I forgot my key." Devin grabbed my wrist. His hand was ice cold. He squeezed once, hard, and I understood what he meant. He meant, don't move, don't answer, don't even breathe. I nodded once in the dark. He let go. The voice in the alley said, "Devin, man, come on. Open the window. It's cold." Devin closed his eyes. I could see him in the dim light from the alley, his face turned toward the floor, his jaw locked. He was not going to answer. He knew. He knew the whole time. But he was hearing his best friend's voice telling him to let him in. And his best friend was sitting 2 feet away from him on the floor. And there is a part of your brain that cannot reconcile those 2 facts at the same time. There is a part of your brain that, even when you know better, even when you have been told 100 times, even when you have seen the shoes on the sidewalk, still tries to make the world make sense by deciding that one of the 2 impossibilities must be wrong. And it is much easier to decide that the impossibility you cannot see is wrong than the one you can hear. That is how they get you. The voice in the alley waited. It waited for a full minute. I counted. I sat there in the dark with my hand pressed over my own mouth, and I counted to 60. And the voice in the alley waited. And then it said, in the same casual, easy tone, "Okay. I'll just sit out here until you're ready." Then it sat down. I heard it. I heard the soft sound of fabric folding, the way pants make a sound when somebody settles onto pavement. I heard it lean back against the dumpster. I heard it sigh, the way I sigh, the exact way I sigh. It stayed there all night. Around 2 in the morning, we heard Mrs. Atchison scream. It was a real scream. It was not a voice pretending to scream. There is a difference. A real scream has an edge to it that you cannot fake, because the body makes a sound that the body has not chosen to make. And that sound is recognizable to anyone who has ever heard it. This was a real scream. It came from the apartment next door. It went on for about 4 seconds, and then it stopped. A minute later, we heard the voice that had been pretending to be Mr. Atchison at our front door yesterday. It said in the hallway outside our door, "Oh no, honey, oh honey, what happened?" The voice was pretending to find her. The voice was performing grief for an audience of one, and the audience was us, and the voice knew it. Devin had his head between his knees. He was rocking, very slightly, the way you do when you are trying to keep yourself from making a noise. I had my back pressed against the bed frame and my hands flat on the floor because I needed to feel something solid, something real, something that was not a sound. In the hallway, the voice pretending to be Mr. Atchison started to cry. It did a good job. It sounded like a man who had just found his wife of 40 years dead on the kitchen floor. It sounded heartbroken. It sounded like a person. Then it knocked on our door. It said, "Please, please, somebody. My wife. Please open the door. I just need somebody. I just need somebody to be here." The bookshelf we had moved in front of the door was heavy. I had to remind myself of that. The bookshelf was heavy. The door was locked. The chain was on. The deadbolt was thrown. There were 4 separate barriers between us and the voice in the hallway. And even if I wanted to open the door, even if my body decided to override my mind, it would still take me a full minute to undo all of them. That minute was the only thing keeping me from doing it. I want to be honest. I want to be honest with you about this. The voice was good. The voice was very good. The voice was crying in a way that made me feel, in a small but real part of my chest, that I was a bad person for not opening the door. That I was failing a human being who needed help. That I had become the kind of man who could listen to a neighbor crying through a door and do nothing. That is how they get you. At 3:30 a.m., my phone vibrated. Once, very quietly. I had silenced it but not turned it off because I needed to know if anything official came through. It was a text message from an unknown number. It said, "If you're inside, stay inside. If you're hearing your own voice, you've been targeted. We are a group of survivors coordinating safe contact. Do not call this number. Do not text back. We will message again at 6 a.m. If you receive that second message, you can trust this channel." I showed it to Devin. He read it twice. He looked at me. We did not say anything, because by then we had stopped saying anything out loud at all. But I could see the question in his face, and the question was, do we trust this? I shrugged. He shrugged. We put the phone face down on the floor. At 6 a.m. exactly, the phone vibrated again. Same number, second message. It said, Good. You waited. That was the test. If you'd called or texted back before now, we'd know you weren't human. Because the things outside cannot wait. They have to keep speaking. Silence is the only thing they cannot do. Remember that. Silence is the only thing they cannot do. I read that line 3 times. Silence is the only thing they cannot do. It was the first piece of useful information anybody had given us in 36 hours. It was a rule. It was a real rule. The kind of rule you can act on. And it explained something I had been noticing without being able to name. The voices never stopped. They paused, but they always came back. They had to keep speaking. They could go silent for a minute, maybe 2, but they could not hold silence the way a person can hold silence. A real person can sit in a room and not make a sound for an hour. A real person can hold their breath for 30 seconds. The things outside could not. I tested it. I had to. I am sorry. I know it was stupid. But I had to know if the message was true. I waited until the next pause in the voice in the alley. The voice that sounded like me. It had been talking on and off for almost 10 hours, in the same patient, friendly tone, telling me it was cold, telling me it had forgotten its key, telling me Devin should let it in. When it paused, I started counting. 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40. At 47 seconds, the voice spoke again. It said, "Marcus, come on, man." I counted again. 38 seconds. Then it spoke. Again. 41 seconds. Again. 34. It could not stay silent longer than about a minute. It always broke. It always had to say something. And the something it said was always slightly less convincing than the thing before it. As if the longer the silence, the more energy it took to hold the disguise. And the worse the disguise got each time it had to be put back on. I started timing the silences and writing them down. I did this for an hour. The average was 39 seconds. The longest was 51. The shortest was 12. It could not stay silent. And once I knew that, I knew something else. Something the message had not said, but that I could now see for myself. The voices were not listening to us. They were broadcasting. They could not hear us at all. They only needed us to hear them. The second message arrived at 6 a.m. There was a third one at 9:15. It said, "You found the rule. Good. Most people don't. Stay where you are. We are mapping safe houses. There are more of us than you think." I did not write back because the rules were clear, but I sat with that message for a long time. There are more of us than you think. That was the first piece of hope I had received since the alert on Tuesday night. There were more of us. Not many, but more. By the afternoon, the messages were coming every 2 hours. Each one was short. Each one was useful. Each one taught me something. Message 4 said, "The voices cannot enter a residence unless invited. We do not know why this rule exists. We know that it does." Message 5 said, "An invitation can be spoken, written, gestured, or implied. Do not respond. Do not nod. Do not write. Do not turn toward the door. Treat every interaction as a contract." Message 6 said, "If you live with another person, do not let them answer for you. Do not let them speak on your behalf. The voices used shared answers to find the gap. Message 7 was the one that broke me a little. It said, "We have lost an estimated 4 million people in the United States in the first 72 hours. The voices are slowing down. They have reached a saturation point. From here, the danger is no longer the voices themselves. The danger is what they leave behind." I read that last sentence 3 times. The danger is no longer the voices themselves. The danger is what they leave behind. I did not know what it meant. Not yet. I would find out by the end of the week. But at that moment, on Thursday afternoon, with the sun coming through the kitchen window and Devin asleep on the couch and the city outside as quiet as a held breath, I did not know. I just kept reading the message and feeling something in my chest get heavier and heavier. 4 million people. 4 million people in 3 days. I tried to think of what that looked like. I could not. The number was too big, and my brain was too tired. And the only thing I could really hold in my head was the sound of the door closing 2 buildings down. 2 nights ago, after the woman had said the word "Daddy," and the way that door had not opened again since. 4 million doors. 4 million names said in the voices of the dead. I put the phone down, and I went into the bathroom, and I sat on the edge of the tub, and I cried quietly for 10 minutes. Then I got up and I made coffee. Because what else are you going to do? On Thursday evening, before sunset, Devin was at the kitchen window and he said very quietly, "Marcus, the shoes." I came over. I looked. The shoes on the sidewalk had moved, not all of them, just some. The pair of brown leather loafers in front of the building across the street were no longer in front of the building across the street. They were now in the middle of the road. They were facing our building. They were placed neatly, side by side, the way they had been on the sidewalk, but they were closer. The pink sneakers on the corner were also closer, by about 10 feet. The nursing shoes from the welcome mat 2 doors down were on the sidewalk now, halfway to our building. I stared at them. I tried to remember if they had been in those positions earlier in the day. I was almost sure they had not been. I had looked at the street that morning. I had counted the pairs. There had been 11 pairs visible from our window. There were still 11 pairs. They had just moved closer. I did not see them move. I never saw them move. I watched the street for 20 minutes that evening, and the shoes did not move while I was watching. But every time I looked away, and every time I looked back, some of the shoes were in slightly different positions than they had been before. And all of those positions were closer to our building. By sunset, the brown loafers were on the curb directly below our window. Devin said, "We need to move the bed." We moved the bed. We pushed it against the bedroom window. It was a queen-size frame, and it was heavy, and it took both of us, and we did it without speaking. When it was in place, we put the dresser on top of it, and then we put the bookshelf from the living room on top of the dresser, and the window was completely covered. And the bedroom was now sealed off from the outside in a way it had not been before. And we both stood in the doorway and looked at our work, and we did not feel safer. We did not feel safer because the shoes were still out there, and we could not see them anymore. and not being able to see them was, somehow, worse than being able to see them. Because at least when we could see them, we knew where they were. We slept in the living room that night. We slept in shifts. On Friday morning, I went into the kitchen to make coffee, and the voice that sounded like me was no longer in the alley. It was in the building. I do not know how. I do not know when. I do not know what door it used or what window it slipped through or what invitation it found that we had not realized we had given. But it was inside the building, and it was in the stairwell, and it was calling Devon's name. It said, "Devon, hey, it's Marcus. I'm in the hallway. Open the door." Devon was asleep on the couch. He was facing me. His eyes were closed, his mouth was slightly open. He was breathing the slow, even breath of a man who had not had real sleep in 70 hours and was finally getting some. I did not wake him. I want to explain why I did not wake him. I want to explain it to myself, because I have thought about it 1,000 times since, and I still don't know if I made the right decision. But at the time, the reasoning was this. If I woke him up, he would hear my voice in the hallway. He would hear my voice saying his name, and he would hear my voice from across the room, and he would have to choose, in a half-asleep state, which voice to trust. And I did not want him to have to make that choice. So I went into the kitchen as quietly as I could, and I picked up a knife from the block, and I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets, and I waited. The voice in the hallway kept calling. It said, "Devon, come on, man, open up." It said, "Devon, Devon." I locked myself out. It said, "Devon, Devon, why aren't you answering?" It said my name. It said his name. It mixed them up. It tried different inflections. It tried different tones. It got frustrated. It got soft. It got angry. It got friendly again. It did all of this for almost 2 hours. And then it stopped. And the stopping was worse than the talking, because the stopping meant it was no longer trying. The stopping meant it had decided to try something else. The handle of our front door turned, slowly, just slightly, the way a handle turns when somebody on the other side is checking to see if it's locked. I held my breath. The handle turned a little further. The bolt held. The door did not open. Then the handle turned the other way. It twisted hard, all the way to the stop, and held there for 10 seconds and released. Then nothing. Then, from underneath the door, I saw a shadow move. 2 shadows, the shape of 2 feet, standing very still on the other side of the door, in the gap of light between the door and the floor. The feet did not move for a long time. Then a piece of paper slid under the door. I want to describe this exactly. The paper was folded once. It was white. It was the kind of paper that comes from a printer. It slid under the door slowly and stopped about a foot inside our apartment. And the shadow of the feet on the other side stayed where it was. And the paper just sat there on our floor. I did not touch it for almost 10 minutes. When I finally did pick it up, I picked it up with the tip of the knife because I did not want to touch it with my hands. I lifted it. I carried it over to the kitchen window where the light was better. I unfolded it with the blade. There were 5 words written on the paper, in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. It said, I know about the bookshelf. I stared at the paper. I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I looked at the front door. The bookshelf was still there. It had not moved. The barricade was intact. But the voice on the other side of the door, the voice that sounded like me, the voice that had been in the alley, and then in the stairwell, and then in the hallway, knew about the bookshelf, knew it was there, knew it was the only thing keeping it out. And the voice had written to me, and the voice's handwriting was my handwriting. I woke Devin up. I had to. I needed somebody else to see the paper because I needed somebody else to confirm that I was not losing my mind. He read it. He read it twice. He looked at me. He said, "Marcus." I said, "Yeah." He said, "When did you write this?" I said, "I didn't." He looked at me for a long time. He looked at the paper. He looked at the front door. He looked back at me. He said, "Marcus, that's your handwriting." I said, "I know." He said, "That's your handwriting, and you didn't write it." I said, "I didn't." He said, "Okay." He said, "Okay," but I could see it in his face. The small shift in his face. The small new distance in the way he was looking at me. The small new question that had not been there before and that I did not think I could remove. He was wondering. He was wondering if maybe I had written the paper and forgotten. He was wondering if maybe the voice in the hallway and the man on the floor of his kitchen were two halves of the same problem. He did not say any of that out loud. He just said, "Okay." And then he got up and he made coffee, and he did not look at me for the rest of the morning. That was the moment I realized the voices had done something worse than take the people outside. They had started to take the people inside too. Day 5 was a Saturday. I am writing all of this down because I do not trust my memory anymore, and I do not trust my voice anymore. And I want there to be a record of what happened in the order it happened, so that if anybody finds this, anybody real, they will know. Day 5 was the day the walls started to talk. It started in the bathroom. I was washing my hands. The faucet was running. Underneath the sound of the water, I heard something else. A whisper. Very low. Coming from the wall above the sink, the wall that faced the apartment next door, Mrs. Atchison's apartment, or what used to be Mrs. Atchison's apartment, because nobody had heard anything from in there in 3 days. The whisper said my name. It did not sound like me this time. It did not sound like a friend. It did not sound like a stranger. It sounded like a chorus, like many voices, very quiet, all saying the same word at the same time. And the word was Marcus. And they were saying it the way you say a name when you are trying to remember if it is the right one. I turned the faucet off. The whisper stopped. I turned the faucet back on. The whisper started again. This time, it said, "We can see the shape of you. I want to be clear. I want to be very clear." The wall was not vibrating. There was no speaker. There was no device. The pipes were quiet. The drain was clear. There was no reason, no physical reason, no mechanical reason for there to be a sound in the wall. But there was a sound in the wall, and the sound was made of voices. And the voices knew my name, and they knew what I looked like. And they were on the other side of a layer of drywall, and they had been there the whole time. I do not know for how long. I do not know if they had been there since the first night. I do not know if they had moved in after Mrs. Atchison screamed. I do not know if the building itself had become the thing they lived in, the way termites live in wood. I turned the faucet off. I walked into the living room. I sat down across from Devin. I said, "Don't run the water." He said, "Why?" I said, "Just don't." He didn't. That night, Devin heard them. He was in the kitchen, getting a glass of water from one of the bottles we had filled on Wednesday. I was in the bedroom, lying on the mattress on the floor because we had taken the box spring apart to barricade the other window, and I was almost asleep. The kind of half-sleep where you are still aware of the room, but no longer aware of the time. I heard him drop the glass. It did not shatter. It bounced on the linoleum. Plastic. I sat up. I went into the kitchen. He was standing in the middle of the floor. He was holding very still. His hand was still in the shape of holding the glass that was no longer in his hand. He was looking at the wall behind the refrigerator. I said, "What?" He did not say anything. I said, "Devin, what?" He pointed at the wall. He pointed at the wall behind the refrigerator, the wall that the refrigerator was pushed up against, the wall that was shared with the stairwell of the building. He said, in a voice so quiet I almost did not hear him. It said my mother's name. I went over to him. I put my hand on his shoulder. His shoulder was rigid. His shoulder was the shoulder of a man who had been hit in the face and had not yet decided to react. He said, "Marcus," it said her name. And then it said, "We have her now." I did not know what to say. I did not know what to say, because what could I say? His mother had been dead for 6 years. There was no version of "we have her now" that meant anything good. There was no version of "we have her now" that left any room for hope. There was only the sentence and the wall and the voice and the silence after. We stood in the kitchen for a long time. Eventually he said, "We have to leave." I said, "We can't." He said, "We have to. They're inside. They're in the walls. They're going to get in. They're going to get in eventually. We can't stay here, Marcus." I said, "We can't go out there. We don't know what's out there. Nobody has told us it's safe." He said, "Nobody's going to tell us anything ever again." I did not have an answer to that. I did not have an answer because he was right. The civil advisories had stopped. The texts from the network had stopped 2 days ago, with no explanation. The news had stopped broadcasting. The city was quiet. Nobody was going to tell us anything ever again. We made a plan. I do not know if it was a good plan. I do not know if there was a good plan available to us at that point. But we made one, sitting on the kitchen floor with a flashlight between us and a roll of duct tape and the keys to my car, which had been parked on the street since Tuesday and which we had to hope was still there. The plan was this. We would leave at noon. Not at dawn, not at night. At noon, when the sun was at its highest, because the voices had only ever come at night, and because the shoes on the sidewalk only ever moved when nobody was watching, and because we had to bet on something and we were betting on light. We would take only what we could carry in one bag each: water, food, phones, a knife each, Devin's grandfather's pistol, which he had kept in a shoebox in his closet for as long as I had known him, and which he had never fired. We would not speak from the moment we left the apartment until we were in the car. Not a word, not a sound. We would communicate by hand signals. We had worked out the signals already. Stop, go, quiet, look, run. We would not look at any pair of shoes on the sidewalk. We would not look at any window of any building on the way to the car. We would not look at any face we saw, if we saw any faces at all. We would get to the car. We would get in. We would drive. We did not have a destination. We did not have anywhere to go. But we had a direction, which was away. And we had a time, which was noon. And we had each other, which was the only thing left that I trusted, even though I was not sure I trusted it completely anymore. We slept in shifts that night, or we tried to. I do not think either of us slept more than an hour. The voices in the walls did not stop. They got louder. They moved. They were in the kitchen wall, and then in the bedroom wall, and then in the ceiling, and then under the floor. And they were saying our names, both of our names, over and over, the way you say a list when you are checking off who is present. At 11:55 a.m. on Sunday, we put on our shoes. At 11:58 a.m., we shouldered our bags. At 11:59 a.m., we moved the bookshelf away from the door. It made a sound. It could not be helped. The legs of the bookshelf dragged on the hardwood and made a long, low scraping noise, and the moment the noise started, the voices in the walls stopped. All of them, at the same time, mid-word. The apartment went completely silent. I have never heard silence like that. It was not the silence of a quiet room. It was the silence of a held breath. It was the silence of an entire building, an entire city, an entire something, waiting to see what we would do next. We opened the door. The hallway was empty. The light from the stairwell window at the end of the hall was warm and yellow and ordinary. There were no shoes. There were no shadows. There was nothing in the hallway at all except dust and the smell of old carpet and the faint, faint sound of a refrigerator humming somewhere on another floor. We walked. We walked slowly. We walked together. Devin was ahead. I was behind. We did not speak. We did not look at the doors of the other apartments as we passed them. We did not look at Mrs. Atchison's door. We did not look at the door of the apartment 3 floors up, where the window had opened on Tuesday night and never closed. We made it to the stairwell. We made it down 1 flight. On the landing of the 2nd floor, there was a pair of shoes. They had not been there a minute before. I am sure of this. I am as sure of this as I am of anything in my life. The landing had been empty when we started down. And now there was a pair of shoes on the landing. Men's dress shoes. Black, polished. Placed neatly side by side, facing the stairs we were coming down. Devin stopped. I stopped. The shoes did not move. We stepped around them. We did not look at them. We kept going. We came out of the front door of the building at 12:04 p.m. The street was empty. Not empty in the way a street is empty on a Sunday morning. Empty in the way a stage is empty before a show. The cars were where they had been parked on Tuesday. The trash cans were on the curb. A delivery truck was parked sideways across 2 lanes, as if the driver had stopped suddenly and not come back. The sun was high and pale, and the sky was the color of an empty page. There were shoes everywhere. I had not realized how many shoes there were. From our window, we had counted 11 pairs on our block. From the street, looking down its length, I could see hundreds. Pairs of shoes in front of every building. Pairs of shoes in the middle of intersections. Pairs of shoes lined up along the curb the way protesters line up. All facing the same direction, all facing inward, all facing whoever was walking past. We did not look at them. We walked to the car. My car, a blue Honda. It was where I had left it, parked between a hatchback and a van. The driver's side door was unlocked. I did not remember leaving it unlocked. I did not care. I got in, Devin got in. I put the key in the ignition. I turned it. The engine started. I want you to understand what a miracle this was. The engine started on the first turn. A small, ordinary, mechanical miracle. The kind of thing I had never thought to be grateful for. The engine started and the dashboard lit up and the radio came on and the radio was playing static. Just static. The calm, gray static of a station that was no longer broadcasting. And I had never been so happy to hear a sound that was not a voice. I put the car in drive. I pulled away from the curb. In the rear view mirror, I saw the shoes on the sidewalk turn. All of them. At the same time. The shoes on the sidewalk in front of our building turned, all at once, in unison, to face the car as we drove away. The pink sneakers, the brown loafers, the nursing shoes, the men's dress shoes from the landing, which were now somehow, impossibly, also on the sidewalk in front of our building. They turned to watch us go. I did not stop driving. The highway was empty. We drove for 40 miles before we saw another moving vehicle. It was a pickup truck going the other direction, and the driver lifted one hand from the wheel as we passed. The small, flat wave of a man acknowledging another survivor. And I lifted my hand back, and we kept going in opposite directions, and neither of us slowed down. The exits were lined with cars, not crashed, just parked, just stopped. Sometimes the doors were open. Sometimes the doors were closed. Sometimes there were shoes next to the cars. We did not stop. Around mile 60, the radio cut through the static. Just for a second. A voice. A man's voice. It said something I could not quite make out. And then the static came back. And I almost reached over to turn the dial, and Devin said, "Don't." I didn't. Around mile 90, we saw a roadblock. State troopers, real ones, real uniforms, real cars with real lights on. They flagged us down and we pulled over, and the trooper who came to the window was a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a clipboard. She said, "Are either of you injured?" We said no. She said, "Have either of you spoken to any voices outside your residence in the last 7 days?" We said no. She said, "Have either of you written or received any handwritten communication from an unknown source in the last 7 days?" I thought about the piece of paper. I thought about my own handwriting on it. I looked at Devin. Devin looked at me. I said, "No." She wrote something on her clipboard. She did not ask us to confirm. She just wrote it down. She said, "There is a relocation center 30 miles ahead. You will be processed there. Do not stop. Do not pick up anybody on the road. If anybody flags you down, even if they look like they need help, do not stop. We have lost people that way." We thanked her. We drove on. I do not know if I should have told her about the paper. I do not know what they would have done if I had. I do not know if I would have been let through the roadblock at all. I drove on. The relocation center was a converted high school. There were tents in the parking lot. There were generators. There were lines of people, hundreds of people, standing in quiet, orderly lines waiting to be checked in. The lines moved slowly. Nobody complained. We waited for 3 hours. When we got to the front of the line, a man in an army uniform asked us a series of questions, the same questions as the trooper, plus more. Had we lost family members? Had we heard voices in our home? Had we heard voices that sounded like ourselves? Had we received written messages? Had we been alone with any unfamiliar object? Had we taken anything from our residence that did not belong to us? We answered honestly to most of them. I lied about the paper. I do not know why I lied. I think I lied because I was afraid of what would happen if I told the truth. I think I lied because the paper had been in my handwriting. And I did not want them to look at me the way Devin had looked at me on Friday morning. The small new distance, the small new question. I lied, and they processed us, and they assigned us a cot in the gym, and they gave us each a bottle of water and a sandwich and a blanket, and they told us not to leave the building after dark. I have been here for 2 weeks. Devin is still here too. He sleeps 3 cots down from me. We talk sometimes, but not as much as we used to. There is something between us now that was not there before. I do not know if it can be undone. I do not know if anything can be undone. The voices have not come back, not here, not yet. The center is full and loud, and there's always somebody crying, or somebody laughing, or somebody talking in their sleep. And the noise is constant. And the noise is the thing that keeps us safe. Silence is the only thing they cannot do. So we are never silent. Last night, I got up to use the bathroom. It was 3 a.m. The gym was full of the sound of 300 people breathing. I walked along the row of cots toward the doors at the end of the gym. The hallway lights were on. The bathrooms were down a corridor to the left. I went in. I washed my hands. I looked up at the mirror. The man in the mirror was me. He was wearing what I was wearing. He had my face. He had my hair. He had the small scar above my left eyebrow that I got falling off a bike when I was 9. But he was not moving the way I was moving. I lifted my right hand to my face. He lifted his right hand to his face. The same hand, the same motion. But his hand arrived about a half second after mine. The smallest delay. The kind of delay you would not notice unless you were looking for it. I lowered my hand. He lowered his. Half a second later, I stood very still. He stood very still. He smiled. I did not. I am writing this in the morning. I am writing it on a piece of paper that I am going to fold and put in the pocket of the jacket I came here with. I am going to leave the jacket on my cot, and I am going to walk out of the relocation center, because I cannot stay here, because whatever followed us here did not come in through the doors. It came in with me. It is in the mirror. It is in my hand. It is in my shadow. I do not know where I will go. I do not know how much of me will get there. But I have to go, because if I stay, Devin will be next. If you are reading this, I want you to know 3 things. The first is that the rule is true. The voices cannot stay silent. If you hear one, count. Time the gaps. If the voice has to speak again within a minute, it is not a person. Do not respond. Do not engage. Do not answer. The second is that they leave things behind. Shoes, paper, handwriting, reflections, pieces of you that do not belong to you anymore. If you find one of these things, do not touch it. Do not look at it for too long. Do not let it follow you home, because home will not be the safe place you remember. The third is the hardest. The third is that some of us are not coming back. Some of us were taken on the first night, and some of us were taken on the second. And some of us, like me, were taken in pieces, over days, in ways that we did not notice until it was too late. There is a version of me that is still in that apartment. There is a version of me that turned, with the shoes on the sidewalk, to watch the car drive away. There is a version of me that is writing this. I do not know which one is which anymore. I am sorry. I am leaving this paper on my cot. I am walking out the east doors at 6 a.m. when the sun comes up, because I still believe in the sun, even though I'm not sure I should. If anybody finds this, please tell Devin I'm sorry. Tell him I tried to do the right thing. Tell him I did not write the note that came under the door. Tell him the man in the mirror smiled, and I did not. Tell him to keep talking to anybody about anything. Tell him not to let the room go quiet. Tell him I love him like a brother. Tell him if he hears my voice outside the gym tonight, or any night after this, he should not answer. Even if it sounds like me, especially if it sounds like me. This is the last thing I have to say. The sun is coming up. I can hear birds. I had forgotten how loud they were.